Hi, and welcome to EdVantage. My name is Marie Hunsinger, and today we're going to continue a conversation on social class in the United States specifically. The first thing that I want to talk to you about are certain American class ideologies that are prevalent in the United States and that can influence the way that we think about our social class system. The first one is called the American Dream, and I'm sure you've heard of this before, but the idea of the American Dream is that through hard work, through persistence and talent, you can achieve your wildest dreams. You can go from rags to riches if you just work hard enough. The second ideology is called a meritocracy. And a meritocracy is a system where the talented and the skilled and the most hardworking are the ones who are able to get promoted and who are the most economically rewarded. The third ideology is called individualism, and this is a social theory that favors the individuals versus the collectives, or state control. So in individualistic societies, the idea is on an individual's own happiness, the individual's self-interest, versus the collectivist culture or even the community or the state. Now, these ideologies aren't necessarily good or bad. We don't attach a value judgment to them, but they do help inform us on how we view our class system and the fairness of it. So if we look at these ideologies, we kind of see a similar theme, which is that it's on the individual to do well, on the individual to put in the hard work to achieve success. And so what this means is when we see a poor person, if we buy into these ideologies, then we may assume that that person is poor because of their own doing, and we may overlook more systemic or environmental reasons. So in the United States, there's a class system, as I mentioned in a previous video, and there's big debate on how many social classes there actually are. Sociologists have agreed that there's about 4 to 6 different social classes in the United States. If you ask any random American person what social class they belong to, more often than not, they're going to reply with middle. Most people believe that they're middle class, which has a wide range when you ask people. It ranges from about $30,000 a year of household income to all the way up to $100,000 a year. So that's a pretty big gap. So again, these are somewhat subjective, but the first social class we have is, the upper tier, or the top 1% or the top 10%. In here we have CEOs, politicians, celebrities, people making over $200,000 a year. Below that is called the upper middle class, and these tend to be professionals who have either a graduate or professional degree, and they make between $70,000 and $100,000 a year. Below that we have the lower middle class, and these people more often than not may have a bachelor's degree, work white-collar jobs, lower status than the upper middle class, but this can include jobs like paralegal or teacher, and they make between usually $32,000 to $50,000 a year. Underneath that, we have the working class. These people may have a trade certificate or an associate's degree. They tend to do more blue-collar work, meaning mechanic or construction, or pink collar, which is lower middle class jobs or working class jobs for women, which usually includes areas like the service industry, retail, and food service. And finally, we have the lower class, and these people tend to be either underemployed or unemployed. And they may have a high school diploma, may not have a high school diploma, and they average about $7,000 a year. So in sociology, not only are we interested in social class, but we're interested in how social class intersects with other social location factors like gender, race, age, etc. So you probably have heard of the term the gender pay gap before, and we'll go into this in depth in a future video. But on average, men tend to make more money than women. And so the latest figures for 2018 is that for all workers age 16 plus, women make about 85 cents to the man's dollar. And what's important to note is that you can further dissect this by age, because younger women have a narrower pay gap compared to older women. So for women women workers aged 25 to 34, the gap is about 89 cents to the man's dollar. And we'll talk about some reasons for that in the future. Okay, let's talk about social class and race and gender. So in our society, we tend to pay white and Asian workers more than Black and Hispanic workers. On average, men tend to, as I said before, make more money than women. The highest paid earners are Asian men, who make about $24 an hour on average. And you can compare this to Hispanic women, who only make about $12 an hour. So Asian men are pulling in about double what Hispanic women are pulling in. As far as social class and outcomes, let's take a look at a few different institutions. So the first one is education. Now, you probably have heard that the more education you have, the better you tend to do in our social class system. And the data proves that to be true. So typically, those who have at least a bachelor's degree or even higher than that tend to have the lowest unemployment rates and also tend to bring in the highest median weekly earnings. So you can see by this graph here that actually people with a professional degree make the most weekly earnings, and then a doctoral degree makes the second most. And the people who have the highest unemployment rate and the lowest median earnings tend to have less than a high school diploma. So if you needed another reason to stay in school, stay in school. As far as social class and general wellness, it probably doesn't surprise you that money can buy you more than material wealth, but it can buy you a sense of financial security. It can buy you job satisfaction. And what I mean by that is if you are unhappy with your job, but you have savings or wealth, you can leave your job. And typically people who have higher educations, higher social class have tend to have more autonomy in their jobs, tend to make more money, tend to find it more fulfilling. It's also correlated with life happiness, and which is also goes along with feeling stress. So it probably doesn't shock you if you're having financial issues, financial problems. If you're in poverty, you're probably chronically experiencing stress, which can also have a toll on your physical health. So physical health is also correlated with socioeconomic status. So if you think about it, if you have money, you can afford to buy things like organic food, fresh produce. You probably live in a safe neighborhood. You probably have safer and healthier job conditions. Also, you may have access to either employer-provided health insurance or you have the means to afford your own health insurance. You tend to have money to buy a gym membership, or you live in a safe neighborhood where you can run outside and not be afraid of danger. So people who come from wealthier backgrounds or have more money tend to have higher life expectancies and tend to have a better quality of life when it comes to health ailments. Also, people who are of lower socioeconomic status have higher smoking rates compared to people of higher socioeconomic statuses. Okay, social class and marriage. So what's a really interesting trend that we're seeing is that the young people who are getting married today tend to have a higher social class compared to even 20 years ago when most people got married at a young age, or 30 years ago. And so we know that marriage and social class are correlated. And people who come from higher social class backgrounds also tend to report higher satisfaction in their marriages compared to working or poor folks. And this makes sense if you think about it, because a lot of fights are stemmed over finances. And so if that's not a worry for you and your family or your marriage, then that can reduce stress. Also, a lot of young people who are not financially stable say that they do not want to get married until they are more financially stable, which is another reason why people of higher classes tend to be married compared to people of working or poor classes. Okay, well, that's all I have today on the social class system in the United States and outcomes that affect your marriage, wellness, and happiness and health. Please tune in next time. Thank you. Bye.